Hi, I'm Nick and welcome to the Painter's Mess. So, this week's video is a continuation on what I've now dubbed the Death Guard Diaries, which is my work on my Horus Hersey Death Guard army in preparation for an apocalypse game on Saturday the 29th. Said that wrong in the previous video. Which I absolutely will not be able to finish all of these models by then. Because my life has changed a little bit as per my previous video, and it's one of the reasons why I have this glorious mustache, which is I am deploying in October. So to continue on, I just want to keep doing things that I enjoy and making a couple videos that I can and that I have time to make while prepping for deployment, as well as I also have my 2 weeks coming up for my normal reserve time every year, my 2 week active training, as well as, doing my normal job and then being with my family and all that other stuff. So this is just a continuation of my current little mini series that I'm doing for my Death Guard, Horus Hersey army. So one of the fun things that I've realized with doing the Horus Hersey characters and units compared to 40k, again, is that you have all of this ability to do all of these little things like print STL files for 3D print files for like shoulder pads and weapons and all this other stuff. And like the more customized that you make them, the cooler they are, especially in the Horus Hersey community compared to 40k, which a lot of people utilize just the regular models for 40k, paint them really well, and then play their games. But Horus Hersey, you have all of these characters who don't have official models that you are making them for, or if they do, they don't fit the aesthetic of your army. So for me, Death Guard, the aesthetic is Mark III armor for everything, at least in my eyes, and like cool things that make them Death Guard like. So in this case, and this video is a walkthrough of what I did for my Moritat with dual Alchemical flamers, and of course he's carrying dual power scythes because power scythes are awesome and it's Death Guard, so why the hell not? So let's get into the video. I started with the Fafnir Rann model. I do like the Mark III, and I do like that he's holding dual axes, and that's an easy kit bash to switch those to power scythes. So initially, I just start clipping out all of the bits that I'm going to use. I do know that he has a shield on his back that I do not plan on using at all. So it's really just the body, the legs, any of the armor panels, his weapons, as far as like the stuff on his belt and his holsters, and his arms, and then the backpack, of course. I don't plan on using the shield or the knife that comes with it, his helmet or head, or any of those other shoulder pauldrons. They're all Imperial Fists, and I just don't need them for Death Guard stuff. So for me, I like to clip everything out and then start clearing off mold lines. As you can see, I clipped off the top of his little icon on top of his backpack and started gluing everything together. Now currently I'm using Tamiya plastic cement. I don't prefer this personally, but it does have its uses, which I'll explain later in the video. But I probably should have just used super glue, because I'm impatient and using the plastic cement takes a long time for it to fully cure and to fully solidify, to like melt all of those plastic bits together. So I highly recommend using CA glue instead, but here we are. So I do switch later in the video. So a lot of it is just cleaning off all the mold lines and then gluing things together, especially the body and the legs, and then the armor panels. details. So for his chest plate and his legs, I switched to a very sharp knife. I had a dull one, had to switch it out to a new blade, and I just start trimming back all of the laurels and all the other things that are on the front of the chest plate, and just start scraping it with the edge of the knife. So for me, I know you're supposed to cut away from yourself. My thumbs have been cut up pretty well and they have a pretty good amount of scar tissue, so just scraping it with a sharp knife isn't going to cut me, and I'm pretty safe about it. So I clear off his tabard, scrape it a little bit, and get it as smooth as I can. And this is one of the other things that Tamiya plastic cement is really good with, or good for, is that it is acetone. So, or I believe it has acetone in it. I guess I never really checked. But what it does is you can use it to smooth out raised parts because it melts the plastic. And that's what a lot of people use for sprue goo. But for me, I use it more of a melting, not adhesive, but a melting liquid to kind of smooth out those rough edges that I can't fully get with the knife or the files that you saw me use. Excuse my eyes and my glasses, or my head and my glasses that show up in a bunch of these little clips, because, you know, can't keep your head out of the camera view. So next I clear off his chest plate. Same way, I just clear the laurels off. He doesn't, my death guard doesn't need the laurels, but I do keep the skulls. So the skulls on the chest plate are pretty good. I also keep the little gorget on his neck, the little icon and the little gem, as well as I clear off the aquillas that are on the forearm pauldrons once we get to that point. So here you can see I'm using the Tamiya plastic cement to kind of just smooth out those areas that I couldn't quite get with the knife. And here I'm trimming off the little aquillas on the wrists. So the reason why I'm doing this is I have these little 3D printed flamers that are used, that I found off a file for some Death Shroud Terminators. Basically, it's their little alchemical pistols that they have. And I'm using these for this particular Moritat and then my Destroyer Squad. So I had 3D printed all these little flamers off. They have a little platform underneath, a little flat piece, and I just glue them on the wrists. And they are a little bulky, but once, and you'll see this later in the video, they look really good once they're painted and some cables have been added to them. So I add the Mark III shoulder pad on the right hand side, or his right hand side, and then I do the Death Guard shoulder pad on his left hand side. And then I start messing with the power sights. So these power sights are from and then I start messing with the power sights. So these power sights are from Forge World. I didn't get them third party. They are the official ones from Forge World. And something that I noticed were that some of them have hands for Terminators, specifically Death Shroud, and they're a little thick. So I clipped out some of the hand. I clipped some of the hand off, and I tried gluing them on, and I didn't quite like that. So what I ended up doing is clipping out the hand fully, and taking the power axes that come with the kit, with the Fafnir Rann kit, and clipping the power axes off and just gluing the hand into that slot. And then you can just glue the hand right on. So the hand is the official hand as well, and it's just wrapped around with the pieces of the power scythe. And it turned out pretty well. I know that pinning it would have been a little better and a little bit more secure, but I don't really plan on just like chucking these around anywhere, so I think it'll be secure enough for it to work well. After gluing on the second power scythe, I realized that I probably should have done it to the first one, so I went back and fixed the hand again. I do use the CA glue with the Instaset accelerant, and I don't spray it because that just gets everywhere. What I do is actually I take the cap off and I use the little spray nozzle tube as a dropper, and I drop a drop to each spot whenever I put glue on. And that works most of the time, unless of course you tip over the bottle. So be very careful if you do it that way. I've tipped mine over multiple times and it sucks. So I glued on the head, and then I started messing with that little combat shield that goes on his chest towards the shoulder pad. I just cleaned it off. It had dual axes on it. You can see me scraping it and then using the, again, back to the Tamiya plastic cement to kind of smooth it out. And it does make it a little tacky, but let it dry and you won't even notice it. It's also shiny because it's melted plastic. But again, once you paint it, you're not gonna notice it at all. So the next thing that I do is I take a pin vise and I just start doing some divots on the armor, basically to represent some, say got shot by a couple of bolt guns or some kind of battle damage, and it gives it a good, gives the model a good spot to add some rust effects and stuff like that. So I added on the chest, the tabard, a couple on his shoulder pads, basically some wear and tear battle damage. And next we're going to do the cabling for the flamers. So these are my alchemical flamers. Usually I have a alchemical backpack, but in this case I'm just using the standard backpack and just kind of gluing them to the sides of it. I bought some cheap guitar strings from Amazon, and they are flexible and bendable, and they make they're perfect size for cabling for miniatures. So I snipped off a couple pieces at length. I just kind of pre-measured them, snipped them off and bent them back. And you can see me fuddling with this a lot. Futzing with this a lot. Fuddling. I don't know what fuddling is, but I'm going to keep saying it. Basically, it's just a lot of going back and forth and dry fitting these cables and putting a little dab of glue. And because they are metal, they do adhere really quickly with CA glue. But if it's not in the right spot or it didn't look right, I had to fix it with some little tweezers and tried putting it back and forth. So this does take a long time. This did take me a good while, but in the end, it does look really cool with these little hand flamers on these guys' wrist with dual power sights, and they're kind of just like leading into the backpack. So it gives it a good idea, or gives a good visual of these cables that are fueling his Toxiflamer, not Toxiflamer, his Alchemical Flamer wrist flamers or arm flamers. And then I go to the other side and fix that one as well. After futzing with this for a long time, finally get them on, and they look pretty good. So that's pretty much the model at this point. I did not preview it, but we're moving on to the base. So I grab a couple of cork pieces. One is a standard cork piece that I've ripped off from like a large chunk of cork, and the other one is the little rock cork that comes with the Army Painter's little basing kit. I like that one better, and I do end up using it. And then I cut off this tiny itty bitty piece of green stuff, and I flatten it out, or roll it up, flatten it out. So I pull out this tool that I got from my wife. She was just gonna throw it away, and it's this little sculpting thing with a little ball tip at the end. And what I use it for is spreading out the green stuff that I've put on the base to give it this kind of weird alien creeping effect. And this effect stems from a game that I've kind of recently repicked up, which is Command and Conquer Tiberium Wars and Tiberium Sun. And what it is in that game you're gathering Tiberium, which is basically your money source, but it also is like this creeping, crawly, like alien-like substance that is kind of all over the place. So that's kind of what I've based these bases off of, and something that I really think gives it a really cool texture, and like it kind of solidifies the Death Guard creepy, crawling, Nurgle-like features and corruption of the Death Guard. So once I've spread that out on the base, I get my good old texture paste from Vallejo, which is my jar of peanut butter that you can see, and I take a sculpting tool and kind of sculpt around both the rock and the crawling substance that I've put on the base. I don't add a whole lot here, but I do add just enough to give it some texture, and I leave the spaces open to where I can glue the feet. So when you see me kind of place the feet there, I kind of just get a visual representation of where it's going to be. So I leave that open and available to be able to glue the model down to the base. And from here, it's just a matter of adding a little bit of glue and gluing the model down. So I know I went through this pretty quick. This does take a long time to do. This takes hours of work to scrape off mold lines and scrape off filigree and all that other stuff to make something custom and make it yours. So although a lot of these clips are sped up to either 2 times or 4 times fast, just so I can get all of the content in one video, this does actually take a while. But it is super fulfilling that you have this custom model that you have put so much time and effort in to make. So for a final review, I have painted up the model, and I will be posting a video of that in the future, of my process on how I came up with this scheme and how I decided to paint him. I do have all that filmed, and just kind of going through the editing process at this point. But let me know in the comments below how you think that I did, how this conversion looks, and what you like about it and what you don't like about it. And if you plan on doing any kind of cool conversions yourself, I would love to hear about them. I think conversions are awesome, and I think that having some kind of unique design for your characters in the Horus Hersey realm and 40k realm is awesome. So throw those in the comments below, and I would love to read about them and chat and discuss them. So I hope you like this paint scheme. Again, I'm going to be posting a video about it. And if you found that this video has inspired you to do some conversions, or maybe you enjoy this content, hopefully I've earned a subscription from you and maybe a like. So I do really appreciate it. Thank you for joining me on this painting journey, on my painting journey and my conversion journey. I look forward to seeing all of the comments in the bottom to see all the cool conversions. If there's pictures, link them to me. My name's Nick. This is the Painter's Mess. Embrace the mess. Go paint 1 minute at a time, and I will see you in the next video.